I'm Peggy Pirro, and this is Food From Here. Brought to you by Swerka and More, working in support of independent living and a better quality of life for seniors in southwestern Indiana. That mission now includes an intergenerational community garden partnership with Young and Established to help relieve food insecurity in our community. In this episode, I talk with Becky and Ginger Woods, owners of Woods and Stems, an Evansville mushroom farm that grows oyster, chestnut, black trumpet, and lion's mane mushrooms in the grow room they call their mushroom shack. The two women have created mushroom spices, tinctures, and jerky from their mushrooms, and they've partnered with a local coffee roaster to create a lion's mane coffee product. Everything is locally sourced and created with sustainable, low-waste methods, and it's all available online and at a few local retail outlets and directly from the growers throughout the summer at the Franklin Street Bazaar. When I talked to Becky and Ginger, it was as a mushroom neophyte, so I got a lesson in mycorrhizal versus non-mycorrhizal fungi, and why you can cultivate the latter, but not so much the former. We also talked about cooking with mushrooms, and Ginger offered some of her kitchen tips, including which mushrooms make a really great substitute for bacon. Later in the episode, I'll share a recipe for a quick summer farmer's market pickle that you can make in about 30 minutes and use all summer long. It's particularly good on a mushroom burger. And now, here's my conversation with Becky and Ginger Woods of Woods and Stems. Ginger and Becky, welcome to Food From Here. Becky, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to ask you about something you did when you were a kid. You were a morel hunter.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
That was something we grew up doing. We did it with our aunts and our uncles and our cousins, and we made a big sport out of it. Who could find the most, and then you try and sneak off and find your sweet spot where nobody knew where you were at. And it was just a fun time, and I think everybody in Evansville, grew up
hunting morels.
Ginger doesn't have much experience with that because she didn't do that back home where she was from. So,
I'm a city kid.
Are you?
I was a city kid.
Yeah.
So.
What city?
Lancaster, Ohio.
When I first came here, I lived on a piece of property. It was about 4 acres, and it was wooded to some degree. And people told me that there were morels there. I never could find them.
Oh, they hide.
Yeah.
You have to have the eye for them. I think once you find your first one, I think you're good.
Yeah. Is it kind of like seeing a tree frog in the leaves or a bird or something like that?
Kind of.
Once you spot it, then
you see like the leaves peek up, and sometimes you're like, "Ooh, it's under there," and you're like, "Nope, not under there." But they do like certain trees too, so that's a big deal about where you're going to find them. You have to look for. You actually have to be an expert on some trees in order to know where to look.
Yeah, what are good trees?
Elm, tulip poplar, ash. Good ash, not with that has the borer in them, because they will not. They do not like to fruit. Because morels they're a type of mushroom called a mycorrhizal. Mm-hmm. So they form a relationship with a tree. So that's why.
And they can tell if the tree is infected?
They can.
Okay. Yeah.
At least we believe they can.
Mm-hmm.
Like they share their nutrients with the tree, and the tree shares its nutrients with them.
Yeah.
So it's just a beautiful symbiotic relationship.
When you would go mushroom hunting, was it only morels?
No. I was not very good at finding others, but we have lion's mane around here. We have oyster around here. Honey mushrooms. We have chicken of the woods. We have hen of the woods, which is also maitake for those people that don't know. It's the same mushroom.
Yeah. A lot of this is new to me. I have friends who are foragers and others who cultivate, but the world of mushrooms was just recently opened up to me, like in the last year.
Well, it's addicting, so
yeah. Well, it's fascinating to me, and I certainly find them beautiful to look at. I was telling another mushroom grower that they remind me of undersea anemones and corals and things like that, with their color and their variation in shape.
Yes, there's all different shapes and sizes. And
we have a lot of folks when they come to visit us at the Franklin Street Bazaar, they will want to just purchase it and put it on their table and have it as a decoration. And we're like, that won't smell very good in a few days.
Plus, you're going to wake up to spores all over your living room, and that's probably not a good idea.
This was not on the list of questions and topics that I sent to you, but I wanted to ask you about the idea of the mushroom spores, because I did notice on your Facebook page, maybe on your website, the images of you wearing face gear to, I would assume, keep mushroom spores out of your
lungs,
respiratory system. Are they simply ubiquitous in the space? They just
Well, it just depends on how many you have in there. I mean, if I have 10 bags in there, maybe even 20, I should, but don't always wear that. But if I have a full grow room, I'm putting it on because I don't want to get that in my lungs.
Mm-hmm. All right, so wear that mask if you're going to.
I'm allergic to a few things, so I don't like to attempt it.
And they continue to spore. Like if we pick a mushroom and we put it in the refrigerator, waiting for delivery or waiting for the next event that we're getting ready to do, sometimes they still continue to spore in the refrigerator. So you can actually, we have to constantly be cleaning out that refrigerator because we have spores all over.
Let me tell you, if you do not like to clean, you do not want to be a mushroom grower.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part. It has to be sterile.
clean.
I mean, it has to be clean.
Okay, let's back up a little bit and talk about this grow room that you have. In the first season of Food From Here, we talked with Roger Winstead of Beautiful Edibles. Now, he grows mushrooms from blocks like you do in a grow room in downtown Evansville. And your setup is a little different from his, but you start with those blocks, correct? At least for some varieties of mushrooms?
We do not. We do have blocks, but we start way before the blocks. Mushrooms start from a spore, just like a plant would start from a seed. So that's where we start. So we take that spore and we put it in. We're starting from the very beginning here. So we put that with a liquid culture or a agar plate. What that is sterile water mixed with sugars, different forms of sugars. In a plate scenario, it's mixed with agar. From there, if you've done it correctly, and that has to be done under a flow hood, doesn't have to, but your chances of getting it to grow is going to be slim.
Okay, what is a flow hood?
A flow hood it creates a sterile environment. They use them in hospitals.
Okay.
It creates a sterile environment. It cleans the air.
Okay. Is it a contained space then?
I have a contained tent for that. We have a building. It's a 24 by 36 building, but we grow from tents.
Okay.
So we have each station. So it will fill out that liquid culture or that agar plate, and then we will put it to what you guys would refer to as baby food. It's a mixture of grains. It's a small bag, mainly oats that we have cooked. And if you've done that correctly, this is why it all has to be sterile. If you've done that correctly, it fills out and it'll become all white. Think of it as roots.
Okay.
But that's the mycelium.
Mycelium.
So once that's filled out, then you put it to the bags, the adult food, because mushrooms like to eat. They're just decomposers. They'll eat.
Sure, yeah.
So they'll fill that bag out. And that's when, if everything has gone correctly, that's when you get to open it up and you fruit it. I don't want to start at that last stage because I want to know where my stuff has been from the very beginning. I want to take pride in that. And I want it to be from Evansville. I like that.
Yeah. There were a lot of ifs in that statement. A lot of ifs. If you've done it correctly.
Clean.
Yes, very clean.
So it seems like there's a lot of points that it could go awry.
Well, there's others I haven't even mentioned. We have a giant sterilizer that, in small terms, would be like a pressure cooker that we sterilize all the bags in. I even use hospital gloves to inoculate these bags and things. So yes, there's a lot of variables.
You're painting a picture of a lab in my mind.
You can almost call it a lab at times. Yes, yes. A lot of folks will believe that mushrooms are grown out of poo, for a better
and in the dark.
And in the dark, and actually they're not. I mean, they enjoy the light. They enjoy eating good food that we are providing for them, and you have to be sterile or the mushroom won't grow correctly. It'll have other bacteria with it, other germs, and we got to make sure everything is nice and clean to get the best product at the end.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about your grow room. You refer to it on your website as a shack. Not like any shack I've ever seen. It looks like a greenhouse, but it's really not that either, at least in the images that I saw. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you constructed that grow room and why you made it the way you did.
Well, let's first of all say it's too small. We definitely outgrown our
Definitely
space.
started too small. We should have.
What size is it?
It's a 24 by 36 pole barn, actually. Mm-hmm. So it's a pole barn. It's climate controlled, with regular heat, air kind of thing. But mushrooms have to stay a certain temperature, certain moisture. So we've got to make sure that this area stays, as it gets hotter during the summer, we've got to crank things down. Or
each area has to be a different temperature are different. The fruiting room where we grow, where we open up the bags and grow them, you're mimicking the forest floor. That's basically what it's all about.
Okay.
So inside our shack, our mushroom shack, we have several, as she said, grow tents. So we have separate stations for each thing that we do. So as we are inoculating our product, we have a sterile with that flow hood, and it's all contained in one area, and so we know nothing's going to get into what we're making. And then the next step, we have a spawn and substrate room.
Okay.
And that was the baby food in the bigger bags that fill out. And then we have the fruiting room. So those are the stations that we have.
Okay.
And you could probably put a couple of those stations together, but if you do, then you're making it harder on yourself. The spawn and substrate room, you want to keep a certain temperature, but other than that, it's not really that important for anything else in that space. But if I'm going to do inoculations, it's not going to be sterile. It's not going to be, I could try, but it's not going to be perfect.
And when you say inoculations, you mean adding the spores to the substrate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And spawn in the substrate, yep.
All right.
And when you're in that fruiting room, if you know what you're doing, you can actually make mushrooms a brighter color. You can make mushrooms a darker color. You can make them grow bigger. There's all different. You can make them grow faster. You can make them grow slower.
Now, did you learn that
science.
By trial and error, or was this something that you studied?
I studied, but I also learned most of it by trial and error. I'm one of those people that if I want to figure something out, I'm going to go figure it out. So that's what I did.
Yeah. And you learned that you could get a brighter pink or a deeper blue or whatever just by feeding differently or using a different temperature. Okay. So when you get to the stage of the fruiting room, the fruiting stage, once the blocks start to fruit, how much time does it take for those mushrooms to get to a stage where you would
It just
harvest?
Depends on the variety of the mushroom.
Well, pick one and tell me what it might take.
Say a pink oyster.
Okay.
I'm wearing a pink shirt. A pink oyster actually will 7 days. From the time it gets to that fruiting room, we open it up and it's ready to be picked within about 7 days.
Well, that's a quick
Turnaround.
But before that, it took months.
But once you get on that cycle, then you have them every week. It's just like a factory. You start from the beginning but you keep growing. You're constantly growing.
Okay.
So you're constantly at the end stage, even though you're still doing the beginning stage.
Got it. So tell us why you can't grow morels in your shack.
Well, there are different types of mushrooms. There are some mushrooms that are decomposers. That's what we grow because I can feed them. There are other mushrooms that are mycorrhizal, meaning they form a bond with trees. So in order for them to grow, they have to share nutrients with that tree. That bond that they create with that tree, it could take years, and I can't be the tree. So that's why you find that mushrooms, a lot of them so expensive. That's why, truffles, chanterelles, honey mushrooms, morels, all of those really expensive ones, it's because somebody couldn't grow them. So that's the difference.
There are products out there on the internet that people can buy logs and plug those logs with whatever they have given them or some kind of a morel growing kit. You may get one, you may get two, but you're not going to continuously grow another one next year.
Because they need a living.
You can't mimic it.
Right.
So.
People have tried, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But they're not successful.
I love when people say they're successful because I don't see them making a lot of money at it.
When your mushrooms are at a harvesting stage, the peak harvest, and you present them to your buyer or hopeful that you'll find a buyer for them, how long do they last?
That's the problem. They last anywhere from a week. Some will last 3 days. Just depends. And it also depends on what stage you pick them at. I can pick them a little early and make them last a little longer. It just depends. But yeah, longer than 2 weeks and you've got a problem. So I'd say between a week and a half most.
Okay. Do they have like fruit, if it's picked early, the flavor is not developed. Is anything similar with a mushroom?
They might have a little sweeter taste if you let them go a little longer. There's a sweet spot for everything, I think, but for 9 times out of 10, no. They're all going to be about the same. So a mushroom is not a plant. What is it if it's not categorized as a plant? It's in its own kingdom. So it's a fungi kingdom. So plants grow by, retaining the light and the green pigment and the chlorophyll. Fungi can't do that. Fungi are like humans. They have to eat. They have to get theirs from an outside source. They separated from plants, and humans and fungi separated from plants over 1 billion years ago.
Okay.
So we're more closely related to fungi than fungi are to plants. We share 50% of our DNA with fungi.
No kidding.
That's why they are such big helpers for us, because they've been through all of these diseases and all of these things that they've learned how to master, and now they're helping us by, the medicinal side of mushrooms.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
People use medicinal mushrooms. The Chinese have used medicinal mushrooms for centuries. What was the Iceman Ortiz that they found? That was millions of years ago. He was carrying mushrooms. He had a form of worms that he was treating with the mushrooms. Like, it was on his body when they found it. So it's in all cultures.
Okay.
And we currently grow a couple varieties of medicinal mushrooms. Lion's mane is very medicinal. That's one of our most popular ones that we grow. We grow reishi.
We have grown turkey tail. But lion's mane is one of my favorites. Lion's mane is good for anything mind related. So it's very good for brain fog, and it's a helper for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and anything that it's one of the few things that breaks the brain barrier. So it'll help anything that starts in the migraines, anything like that. It's wonderful.
And
Depression.
the lion's mane itself actually looks like a brain.
A brain, it
if
does.
you look at it, it resembles a brain. So she did a lot of studying and learned in some of her herbal classes that what something looks like is usually what
it mimics,
treats or helps with. So
it's interesting with lion's mane too, because that's a delicious mushroom.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Very
for cooking, and it's not simply bitter powdered mushrooms that are good for you. It's
correct.
the things that you cook. as
Reishi,
well.
you cannot eat. Well, I mean, you could.
It's a very,
want to.
very hard mushroom. So people will make teas out of it or tincture, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you wouldn't sit down and eat reishi.
Reishi, yeah, like eating pebbles. Let's talk a little bit about mushrooms in the kitchen. Do you guys cook?
That's her area.
That's my area. I
Okay,
do most
Ginger.
of the cooking at the house, but yes, we do. I've made several dishes, and we made several just simple things and just throwing the mushrooms in. Each of the mushrooms have their own taste profile. So the taste profile of lion's mane is a very buttery flavored mushroom, and a lot of people will use it as a substitute seafood. Crab cakes. We make a lot of crab cakes with it. That's one of the most easiest recipes that anybody can just kind of throw together and drop in a skillet. But we've also marinated it and made steaks out of them. Press it, get the liquid out, and make a steak, a mushroom steak out of it. I have not made this particularly myself, but we have been suggested to try making a Chick-fil-A sandwich kind of out of it with breading it with the batter and deep frying it, making a Chick-fil-A type sandwich out of the lion's mane. The oysters, the pink oyster is our most popular one. Everybody tends to seem to love bacon here in Evansville, so it has a bacon flavor to it. Once you saute it crispy in a skillet, it has that bacon flavor, and you
even
can
has the
throw it.
texture.
It has that, even the texture of bacon. So throwing that in a whatever dish or using it as just a MLT, is that what
That's what they were calling it.
MLT, yes.
Everybody was buying it. Was calling it MLT.
The chestnut mushrooms that we have, I've used those in a couple different dishes. You can make a ramen with them. They hold up very well in a stir fry because they're a crispy, crunchy kind of mushroom. They don't get soggy like when you cook them. Then we have just our regular oyster mushrooms, and what did I make at Thanksgiving? I made some kind
made
of
a Wellington.
I made a mushroom Wellington
black
with
Wellington.
Nice.
with them. So
I think that one's on our website too.
I think
I was going to say there are several. They look very tasty, the recipes that you have on the website, and I would encourage listeners to check that out.
We hosted a cooking class a couple months ago here locally at one of the places, and it turned out very, very well. We had a huge turnout, and we just showed everybody, educated them on the mushroom, what they tasted like, and we had people that were avid chefs, and then we had people that had never picked up a knife before. So it was a great time, and everybody really enjoyed themselves. So I think we'll probably do another one of those.
Where did you do this?
It was at Warehouse 410.
Sure. Yeah.
So
it looks like
wonderful.
a nice
very nice
for
venue.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
We didn't know what to expect, but it sold out, so we were excited and worried, and everybody loved it. And then we asked for the next one. So
because I am not a chef.
Yeah, right.
Did you give people knives and cutting boards?
You let them do everything.
Okay.
Because I know if I'm going to a class, it's fun to watch somebody do something, but I don't want to get in there.
Yeah.
So we just said.
So yeah, everybody cut their own mushrooms. We had some things pre-cut for them because we only had a certain amount of time to be there, but we had all the ingredients ready for them to add. They cut their own mushrooms. They sauteed all of their own stuff, and
they all had cooked surfaces to use.
Yep.
That sounds like a class
it was
I would
very,
like to
very
take.
nice time. We're doing that again at some point.
Okay, and again, I'm referring back to your website when you say that because mushrooms are not plants, regular culinary rules don't apply. How should we approach a mushroom when we bring it into our kitchen?
Don't be scared.
that is definitely.
Every time someone says, well, I would buy those, but I don't know how to use those. But no, don't be scared. You'll figure it out.
So when we say that the rules don't apply, is a lot of people will, if I go to the grocery store and I'm buying regular button mushrooms and you see the dirt all over them, you want to wash them, you want to take the stems out.
Which is fine. You got them at the store.
Which is
you
fine.
should do that.
But if you're purchasing from a direct grower, they're clean. There's no pesticides. There's no bugs to be concerned about. There may be a little bit of the medium from where we pulled it from the block on the bottom that they would have to cut off. But adding water to mushrooms just makes them more...
They're like a sponge.
Yeah, they just soak it up.
Or they get soggy.
And then I think for mushrooms, you just don't need to be afraid of them. They are very adaptable in whatever dish you're wanting to put them in. I mean, if you want them to be the star of the dish, great. If you want them to be just in a dish that you are, making a steak and mushrooms. I mean, mushrooms are just very, very easy to work with. I have a lot of people that get frightened by buying.
Well, that and the time frame. They just have such a short shelf life that people go, well, if I have time to research it or, but they're just afraid to get started. So then they're going to go bad. That's what they think.
Well, they do need to be used up fairly quickly. When I bring them home from picking up from you, what do I do with them? Do I put them in the refrigerator?
You put them in the refrigerator. We deliver where we sell in a paper bag. I just leave it in the paper bag, leave it open in the fridge. They have to breathe, but you don't want them to dry out either. You can also freeze mushrooms so that they last longer. They freeze very well.
Okay, when they're fresh, you just pop them in the freezer.
You would pull them apart as you would pull each individual mushroom, because you usually buy a cluster of mushrooms.
Okay.
So you would pull them apart and lay them on a cookie sheet with a parchment paper and freeze them on the cookie sheet, and then put them into whatever container you can.
That way they're not all stuck together when you pull them out.
Well, that's good to know, because mushrooms, I mean, it's not like they're an investment, but they're not inexpensive.
Correct.
And you don't want them to go to waste.
And you have a hard time finding people that are growing mushrooms. So, when you see somebody, if somebody is after mushrooms and they see a grower, they're going to want to buy more than what they're capable of using in that short time. So that's a wonderful option.
And you can, that's good to know. Let's talk about some product development that you've done at Woods and Stems.
Sure.
What did you start with besides just doing the straight mushrooms?
We started with mushroom jerky. We don't like waste. So as we've just discussed, they have a short shelf life. So, and we're in Evansville that's becoming more open to this type of grow. But in the beginning, it was hard finding people that want to buy the mushrooms. So we had to find other opportunities and ways to use them. So at the time, I thought there already was mushroom jerky. There is now. But at the time there wasn't. I didn't know that. So,
none at all?
No, she used to get jerky, like the vegan jerky, but it was made out of soy. I thought it was made out of mushrooms. So we just decided to make the jerky and started sharing with our friends. And they're like, well, will you make me some of that? So we just started product developing the jerky, and everybody's just eating. And we're like,
it went over very well for us. It actually, we were like she said, we were very shocked that we've got these construction guys, these big. Mainly
buying it and taking it out on the construction site.
They're taking it out on the construction site, and they're loving it. So we were really shocked by that, and it's done very well for us. We're in a couple different boutiques and different shops
Right.
around town, but
We're doing we're doing mushrooms now for French Lick in West Baden, the resort.
Sure.
And we went up there to meet all the guys, the chefs, and one of the things they asked was when we walked in is, "Do you got any of the jerky?" Because we sent some earlier and they're like, they wanted the jerky.
and the mushrooms.
Well, and the mushrooms.
So tell me about developing that product. Did you have to go through a lot of iterations before you got a texture, a flavor,
Yes.
all of that
Yes.
to work right for you?
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, mushrooms are full of liquid. So, trying to find the right amount of dry time, the right amount of flavoring to put in them to make sure that they have, that they have a good taste to them. And we've tried different flavors, which
Some worked,
some
some
worked,
didn't.
some didn't. Some people loved the pickle that we did. We've done a bourbon. We've done all these different flavors, and then we've kind of we're stuck with the 4 that we've got right now because we know that the public really likes them. So
And we don't have time to keep doing all these.
we don't. We really don't. We did have to send the product off to be tested and shelf life tested and water content tested,
That was interesting.
to figure all that out was interesting, yeah, for sure. And,
How did you know to do that?
Research.
yeah, right.
We sent some of our stuff to Oregon State, and the guy, I was impressed with us because the guy told us, he goes, "I can't believe you guys got this right on the first try." He goes, "Most people do not get it right." And he goes, "And I have a guy right now that's trying to make mushroom jerky to last for, what's the word I'm looking for long term. And he's trying to get a year shelf life." He goes, "You guys got a year shelf life." He's at 6 months. So I don't know how we did it. but
Now, how could they
got
tell that? Did they
do
set
the
it back
testing
for a
on it.
year?
They do some kind of rapid testing on it. You
Okay.
can do that.
Okay.
But yeah, they do some kind of test. I don't know how they. We sent some to Purdue, and then we sent it to the Oregon State guy. And
So is this something that needs a state or federal approval?
if we go, is it state? If we go wholesale across, for like 75% of our sales is wholesale, then it goes to another jurisdiction. I think it's federal, state, or I don't remember. But there's so many rules and regulations.
There are. They can be really daunting, and they can keep people from wanting to explore.
Well, I'll tell you how we got started. I kept sending him my stuff to the state, and I'm like, how do I get started with this? How do I send this out to the public? And nobody was getting back to me. They kept sending me to different people. And then finally, they came out and registered us as a farm. And then I'm like, how do I go further? And then we had a guy. They're like, okay, we're going to give you to the guy in Indianapolis, which is the state. So he comes down. We met with him, and he goes, "I think you're good. Wait, I think maybe you need to go with the city for now, because you're not doing wholesale completely now. So let's go with the city." So then I had to keep going back in that rotation. I'm like, need somebody to talk to me. And then the city comes back, and she's basically just like, "We just don't know what to do with you. We've never seen anybody grow mushrooms and want to do mushroom jerky." But now they've figured it out. They're fine with us.
So how long did that process take from the time you decided you wanted to do it? You started
Probably
getting
6
everything?
months because we had to do all the testing and everything.
Probably maybe
So-
even a little bit more.
Probably
than that.
maybe even longer, yeah.
And then you had to come up with your packaging, and
That's changed over time. We started packaging with it almost looked like craft paper bag kind of thing. And we were putting our own labels on. We're making those, and all this was very time consuming.
Thank God I used to be a graphic designer.
So all this was very time consuming, and then we were able to financially move up and actually have our bags printed now, and we've got our UPCs on there, and so it's just developed over time.
what else have you tried?
We have spices. We have dried mushrooms. We have more of the functional mushroom side of things. We have tinctures and mushroom extracts. What else do we have? We've got sipping broth. We've got coffee. When you start here, something that no one has done before, I have learned that unless you can get your stuff in front of somebody's face, they're not really going to pay you much attention. So when we went down to the bazaar, I'm like, I got to draw them to this table with something other than just mushrooms. It's all mushrooms. But the more products I had, the more people that were coming up going, "Oh, wow, this is cool." So that's where all of the products started, from that and the no waste.
Our mushroom coffee has been very,
Very well received.
Yes. We have paired with another local coffee company here, and so we had to go through a whole They
Cupping
call it a cupping session.
Sure.
So we
I'm
had
familiar
to
with that.
try all these different cups of coffee and
Blend it and mix
blend
it.
it and get the right flavor profile that would mix well with the mushrooms that we're putting in with
And that
it.
we liked.
And it turned out very good. I really like it. But I left that session very caffeinated. So,
She's like, the sun's a lot brighter.
So when you do mushroom coffee, what kind of mushroom do you use, and what state? Is it dry? Do you roast it?
I used lion's mane. We may move on to other things when we can, but we use the lion's mane. And if people don't buy from us, that's perfectly fine. But I want them all to be aware that when you go research or go to buy these coffees, make sure that you're looking for certain things. You don't really want a mushroom powder. That's okay, but that's basically you're just dehydrating a mushroom and taking it that way. That's not getting your value out of it.
Okay.
What you want. So you want to look for an extract, a powder extract, if you're going for something like coffee or something you're going to eat. So you're looking for an extract, and you want mushroom, like you want the fruiting bodies. You don't want mycelium. There is value in mycelium, but it's like picking a plant from the roots and trying to get the dirt off the roots. You're going to get more dirt than you got roots. So even though there is value in it, why? You're going to get more value out of just using the fruiting bodies.
Okay.
So that's my talk for everybody.
Okay. Let's talk about functional mushrooms.
Okay.
I don't know a whole lot about this, so maybe one of you could just lead us down that path. Becky?
Well, so so our bodies are able to process alpha glucans. Mushrooms are made up of beta glucans or triterpenes. The beta glucans, they have what's going to support your immune system. They're going to build you up if you have an underactive immune system, and they're going to take you down if you have an overactive immune system when your body's trying to fight against itself.
Okay.
That's one aspect. The other side is like reishi and chaga. They're the triterpenes that they're good for, like sterols, things like that. They're good for fighting cancers and fighting bacteria and fighting, they're antibacterial, and there's just all kinds of good things for them. So each mushroom is good for something. It's something for itself. Like, say cordyceps. Cordyceps is good for like runners and things like that. It's for stamina and that type of thing. Lion's mane's good for the mind. Turkey tail's good for breast cancer. Reishi's good for overall health in general.
And there have been studies that support these?
There have been studies that support these. Okay. If I'm out there in the public, I can't say these are medicinal because there's rules and regulations around that. But your body can't, all this goodness that's in the mushroom, your body can't break that down because it's all in the outer shell, which is called chitin. So in order to get these beta glucans, it has to be hot water extracted. In order to get the triterpenes, it has to be alcohol extracted. Because the chitin is basically like the shell of a bug or the outer shell of a lobster or something like that. So we can't process that. So that's why I always say when you say extract, that's what you're doing.
Okay, the tinctures that you're talking about, they have gone through that kind of process. Do all mushrooms have that? Chitin.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why when you go to the store and you get baby Bella and you put it on your salad and pop it in your mouth, you're getting nothing from that.
I was going to ask you about this because salad bars I'd see the raw mushrooms there, and it was never appetizing to me to look at a raw mushroom and say, oh, I want to eat that. Mm-hmm. But I love cooked mushrooms. So, and I was kind of gratified to learn that I wasn't really missing out on anything by not eating those raw mushrooms.
You want to eat it. And you also, when you get a grower, you want to make sure that it is used out in the sun, set out in the sun, something, because mushrooms also, because they're like humans, they absorb vitamin D. So that's where they're a huge, huge thing for vitamin D if you're lacking, is eat mushrooms, but make sure that they've been out where they can absorb the sun or something like that, UV light, something, because that's where you're going to get.
Well, we were laughing about this earlier, but where did the idea that mushrooms grow in the dark come from?
Some mushrooms do.
Because they like a warm, moist, or cool, just depending on mushroom, area. So a lot of people think in their head a cave or something. And some mushrooms do.
But I will tell you what's interesting. The baby bellas, I have a lot of people that tell me they don't like mushrooms. However, Baby Bella, cremini, and portobello are the exact same mushroom.
Yeah, I have.
And
heard
that's
that.
all you're getting in the stores, basically. So when they tell me that, I'm like, you need to try it. And just if you tell me you don't like it after that, that's fine. But
I used to make mushroom bacon out of portobellos because that's what I could find. And you could slice them, so you'd get a fairly large slice when you slice the mushrooms. But you recommended oysters?
The pink oyster.
The pink
they actually already
oysters.
have your bacon flavored. You would saute them to a crisp saute, not almost like you're thinking you're going to burn them, but you're not. But you don't want a real soft saute on them. But if you get a nice crisp saute on them, they taste just like bacon.
and they got that little grizzly when they get fried up that looks like the ends of bacon.
Yeah.
It's insane.
That's good to know. And I did know that about the creminis and portobellos and baby bells.
But we
and
also
stuff
grow
like
another variety called Black Pearl Trumpet, which is a very meaty, thicker mushroom that you could also marinate in some soy sauce and some brown sugar and all those umami kind of flavors and make bacon out of that mushroom as well. We use that one a lot for a meat substitute.
What do you cook them in? Oil, butter?
That's a good question because the mushrooms will soak up whatever you put with it. So a little bit of oil or a little bit of butter goes a long way.
Same with seasonings.
Same with the seasonings. You don't want to over season taste, because we'll have a lot of folks that will buy our product, come back the next week and be like, I really liked it, but I've used too much oil. And because it just soaks, and you don't want a whole mouthful of oil.
Correct.
Mouthful of salt.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
a little bit goes a long way when it comes to mushrooms because they do absorb a lot of that.
What would you consider from what you grow? What would you consider a starter mushroom for someone who is unfamiliar and wants to cook?
Oyster.
Okay. Very, very
Straightforward.
kitchen friendly and yeah.
Or lion's mane, because lion's mane it has that. You can, if you make crab cakes, for example, take out the crab, put in the lion's mane. That's all you have. Just substitution.
You don't have to cook it first to remove some of the. Just throw it in there as a direct 1-to-1 substitution, and you'd get it. Well, that sounds good. Where can we find you? Where can we find your products, and how can we learn more about you?
We're in a few stores: Social Bear Boutique, Franklin Street Pizza Factory. Damsels does our lion's mane.
It just
They're about
had a
lion's
beer.
mane, and they had a lion's mane beer. We're in a few places in Illinois. French Lick in West Baden. Go visit them. Enjoy their rendition of our mushrooms because they're fabulous up there too.
Always can visit our website and our
Franklin
Facebook.
Street Bazaar. Yeah, we're out there a little bit everywhere, I think, right now.
Okay. Is there anything that we haven't covered?
You did ask one of the questions that you didn't ask. You wanted to know about our logo.
Yes, we skipped
We get,
over that.
we get a
one.
lot of people that ask
Okay,
that.
let's
so-
go there. Tell me about this beautiful logo. And you mentioned that you were a designer. Is there a chance you designed your logo?
I did design. I did not draw it myself. I just designed it. Being a graphic designer was a long time ago, but I do our T-shirts and things like that, and all of our labels and things like that. I do.
So this logo, it has an owl, and it has a triangle that reminded me of alchemy. It's
Yeah.
what I thought of when I saw it. Can you maybe describe it for listeners, and then tell us how you put those elements into a logo?
Sure. Well, one of the reasons I got into the medicinal or functional mushrooms was because my dad came down with kidney cancer. He had, I swear I'm going somewhere with this. He came down with kidney cancer, and he was born with one bad kidney already. So it was not a good diagnosis. He chose not to do chemo or anything like that because they couldn't cure it. So we started treating him with some of the mushrooms, reishi, cordyceps, which is good for kidneys, and a few herbs. And they actually told him if he would have done what they said, that he would not have made it past a year. He lived years. COVID got him. But where I'm going with this is he would sit out on his porch, and when he would have bad days, he was in the middle of the woods, same place that we are. Owls would come around when he was not feeling well. They would, kid you not, would swoop into the porch, land up in the trees right above him like families of owls. It was insane. So when my dad did pass away, I wanted a sign from him, and I wanted it to be an owl. Well, I had a very vivid dream about my dad. Woke up the next morning, and there's an owl sitting in the tree in the morning time. And then it just flew off. So I knew that the logo, I wanted it to be an owl. So that's for my dad. The triangle, there's so many cool meanings behind triangle.
Sure.
One is, birth, life, and death. And what better to represent mushrooms? They're in every stage of life. They're the cycle of life. Without them, you have no life. So that's where it all came together.
Well, it's very striking. The logo. It's very, very beautiful. And if you want to see it, folks, you can go to the Woods and Stems webpage, or you can buy a product, and you'll have that logo on the product. Becky and Ginger Woods, thank you so much for coming in today and talking to us here at Food From Here. And we can find you at the Franklin Street Bazaar throughout the summer, and also online and at various retail and other places throughout southern Indiana and Illinois.
Yes.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, a summer quick pickle for all of your summer meals on the patio. Food From Here is sponsored by Swerka and More, working in support of independent living and a better quality of life for seniors in southwestern Indiana. That mission now includes an intergenerational community garden partnership with Young and Established to help relieve food insecurity in our community. Now that summer weather is here, we're looking for ways to use those vegetables that are starting to come in the garden, at the farmers markets. I have a recipe for you that I call a farmers market quick pickle. If you've made quick pickles before, you know how versatile they are. You can use almost any raw vegetable. You don't need any special equipment, and you can make them in the morning, and they'll be ready by lunchtime. Quick pickles are also known as refrigerator pickles, and they're a great condiment to have on hand to serve with grilled food or sandwiches. You can use them to top a burger or tacos or a salad, and you can add some cooked beans to them, and you've got a simple lunch. So here's what you do. You need a cup of vinegar for every 2 cups of vegetables. You can use apple cider vinegar, rice vinegar, wine vinegar. Some people like white vinegar. Combine whatever you have with about 3 tablespoons of sugar, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 10 to 12 whole peppercorns in a small saucepan. I also like to throw in a small dried chili or 2. Just toss it in whole. And then you heat it all together until the sugar is completely dissolved. Then just set it aside while you chop your vegetables. I start with a carrot or 2, a half a dozen radishes, half of a red onion. You can also try cucumbers, cauliflower, some green beans. If you slice them really small, the brine has a chance to penetrate. So I slice the carrots and the radishes into really thin matchsticks. Cut the onion into thin slices, break those other vegetables into small bits, and pack everything into a jar with maybe a few sprigs of parsley or cilantro, or both. Then you pour the brine into the jar, include the peppercorns and the chili if you're using it, and then put that jar in the fridge. It's pretty much all there is to it. They're usable in maybe as little as an hour, but really they're a lot better after spending the night in the fridge. They'll last a month or more, except, they won't, because you'll want to eat them with everything. And that's the show for today. Join me in 2 weeks for a conversation with the chef in charge of catering at Old National Events Plaza and Dinner on the Bridge in downtown Evansville. Food From Here is produced by Tri-State Media, home of WNIN-FM and WNIN-PBS, with support from Swerka and More. I'm Peggy Pirro. Thanks for listening.